Now I finally caught it. I'm breathing your life inside of mine. I finally caught it. I feel it. You've got my...
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lighthouse. We are in episode 8 and we're at the mark of 2 months, and I just want to stop and do a quick reset. Again, the reason that I'm doing this is not to get overly teachy with people, not to pretend to have all the answers, but it's as simple as there's certain things when I'm reading through the Word of God that stick out to me. There's certain things that lead me to ask questions. There's certain things that lead me to really just think at a deeper level, to pray at a deeper level. And so my heart is I just want to share those. I know that there are things that I'm seeing and they're for me. I'm also knowing and I'm believing that they're not just for me, that they're also for other people and that they'll help other people also. So with that being said, let's take a look at what we have for week 8. We are still in the book of Mark. We will be moving off of the book of Mark here sometime soon, but we're taking our time because there's so much here to unpack. And there's been a lot of good things that have really been piercing me. And I want to talk about another one this week in chapter 9. The question / encouragement this week is really as simple as this. Have you ever been faced yourself in a situation in life where you've wanted to believe but you've struggled to believe? Maybe just at the outset of just believing if there was a God, period. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you've accepted and you do believe that there is a God, that you believe in Jesus and who he is, but you know that there's more. You know there's a deeper level of understanding. You know that there's a deeper level of belief that you're being called to, and yet for some reason we have a block, or there's hurdles in our way that prevent us from going to that next level. That's what I want to talk about. I'm always looking also for practical ways and things that can help me move past a certain situation where I find myself just getting stuck. So if you've ever been in one of those situations where you've wanted to move to a deeper level of belief, today's for you. Let's look at Mark chapter 9. Now there's something called the Transfiguration that takes place, and this is just leading up to what I really want to talk about. The Transfiguration is Jesus goes up on a mountaintop with Peter, James, and John, and then he's joined by Elijah and Moses, and then God in the form of a cloud comes and speaks to all of them. Now this is obviously a huge event. The disciples, the 3 that are there, are confused. Peter doesn't know what to say. He fumbles on some words. Long story short, there's something really important that happens during that moment. After that moment, which is what I want to get to, those 3 disciples and Jesus come down off of the mountain. And then they come upon the rest of the disciples, the other 9. And there's a crowd of people. And Jesus here is arguing. And so he asks, what's all the arguing? What's happening here? And then a man comes forward and basically says, hey, my son was sick. I brought him forward to get some healing. You weren't here. Your disciples tried to heal him, but they were unable to do so. And so now you have the religious leaders, the Pharisees, other people arguing with the disciples about, do they really have a right to do this? Are they really even capable of healing people? And so there's this argument going on. Jesus catches wind of it and he says, stop all of it. Let's put a stop to this and let me speak some truth into the matter, and let's get to the matter at hand. And that's where I want to pick things up in Mark chapter 9. Let's look at verse 19. Now this is Jesus responding to all the people that are arguing. Jesus said to them, you faithless people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy to me. Now what's interesting about this verse is that we don't know who Jesus is addressing. We don't know if Jesus is addressing the disciples for not having enough faith to heal the boy. We don't know if Jesus is addressing the father for not having enough faith to have his son healed. We don't know if he's addressing the religious leaders, the Pharisees, for not having enough faith. We don't know if he's addressing a bunch of people in the crowd. One thing that we can assume is that it's probably a message for everybody that's within earshot. Anybody that can hear what Jesus is saying, the message is probably for them. I think that's a safe bet. And so Jesus is pointing out that the people there don't have the level of faith that's required. Verse 20, it says, so they brought the boy to Jesus. But when the evil spirit saw Jesus, it threw the child into a violent convulsion, and he fell to the ground, writhing and foaming at the mouth. How long has this been happening? Jesus asked the boy's father. He replied, since he was a little boy. The spirit often throws him into the fire or into water, trying to kill him. Have mercy on us and help us if you can. Now, this is where I really started digging in and trying to really get a deeper understanding of what happens next is really what I'm going to be thinking about and praying about this week. Now, notice how Jesus asks the Father how long this has been happening. Now, Jesus probably knows how long this has been happening, but I think it's important that he calls the Father to recall how long the shortcoming, how long this pain has been in his life, how long his son has been impacted. The Father's asking for healing. Jesus wants to know, how bad do you want the healing? How important is it? How long have you been suffering? Okay. Verse 23, Jesus says, "What do you mean if I can?" Jesus asked. Anything is possible if a person believes. Anything is possible if a person believes. Now this is where I stopped, and this is where I started asking questions. This is where I started applying it to myself. Reason being is I think, again, going back to the question I asked in the very beginning, I think we've all had moments in our life where we have wanted to believe, but we haven't been able to fully believe. There's been something preventing us from believing. And so it doesn't matter if you've never believed. It doesn't matter if you're brand new, or it doesn't matter if you've been believing for 20, 30, 40 years. There's always more. There's always more that we can be believing in. So this is applicable for everybody, regardless of where you're at. The Father, recounts to Jesus, this has been happening for a very long time. My child has been suffering. Have mercy on us, he said, and help us if you can. And Jesus says, what do you mean, if I can? He says, anything is possible if you believe. If you look at one of the other translations, this is the NLT. If you look at the ESV translation or some of the others, the Father asks for mercy. He asks for help. But he says, if there's anything that you can do, can you do something? Can you do anything? Meaning, just do something for my child. My child is suffering. The Father has now lost some of the initial hope and some of the initial confidence that he had. The Father showed confidence in bringing his child to the disciples in the first place. He had enough faith to get his child there to bring him for the healing, but yet it says the disciples were not able to heal the man. And maybe this is where some of the man's doubt and unbelief starts forming, or at least has now accelerated or exasperated it to make it even worse. And so Jesus says, what do you mean if I can? It's never an if. Jesus is capable is what he's saying. He said, I'm capable of everything. The man says, can you do something? Can you do anything? And Jesus says, no. It's not that I'm not capable of doing something. I'm capable of doing everything. And that's the key here, is that this man, his belief or lack of belief is holding him back from realizing the full blessing of what he's asking for in the first place. And really the statement that I'm thinking through this week, and that I would challenge all of us to think through this week, is our unbelief the actual beginning of us believing at a deeper level? Is our unbelief the key to our belief? And I know it sounds like it's completely contradictory, but just hear me out on this. The next verse, in verse 24, it says, the Father instantly cried out, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. See, the Father says, I believe, but I still don't believe fully. I do believe, Jesus, but help me overcome my unbelief. And I think there's so much power in what he says about help me overcome my unbelief. Reason being is because I think the man is showing so much humility. He had to put his pride aside and actually admit that he had a shortcoming. You see, when we want more from Jesus, we want a deeper level of understanding. We want blessing. We want revelation. We want anything it is that we are asking Jesus for. It's not that Jesus is ever not capable of doing anything. He says right here, I'm capable of doing everything. The only thing holding you back from receiving what I have is your unbelief. And I think this man, this father, takes a huge step. And this is the result. The healing, I should say, is the result of this man's response. He fully admits to Jesus. He fully surrenders to Jesus. He comes to Jesus and says, I do believe, and yet I still struggle with my unbelief. And Jesus, the only way that I'm going to be able to overcome that unbelief is through you. It's through you that my son will be healed. It's through you that I will be able to believe. So Jesus, heal my unbelief. And so that's why I go back to the statement that I made earlier. If we can get to the point where we can admit, where we can surrender, we can be comfortable, we can be confident enough to actually take this to Jesus and say, Lord, I actually need help believing in the first place. You see, I think so many of us struggle with the fact that there's shame and guilt, and there's such a high expectation that we should never struggle with belief that it prevents us from even having the conversation or having the thought or even entering into prayer to start relationship with Jesus to the level that we need to get to. And yet this man shows us very clearly that when we can take our unbelief to Jesus and set aside our pride, and we can surrender and we can fully admit that we need Jesus, that we are imperfect, and part of that imperfection even comes with fully believing to the level that we need to believe to watch Jesus move in our life, that very step forward, as simple as it may seem, it's a very practical step. We're all looking for practical ways. This is a practical step to very simply say, Jesus, I know that there's a big part of my heart that wants to believe at a deeper level that you can change my life, that my life can be improved, but I need your help. I simply cannot believe on my own. I need you to change my heart. I need you to remove whatever boundaries, whatever things there that may be preventing me from fully believing. Jesus, help me. And that in and of itself, we see here in this very story, leads Jesus to complete and perform the healing on this man's son. And the word of encouragement this week is simply this. Don't let your fear, your doubts of unbelief hold you back from having a conversation with Jesus this week. I believe that this week, if you can actually flip that on its head and take your unbelief to the feet of Jesus, that he will work something in you that will help you overcome anything that's holding you back from believing. I know I'm going to be praying about it this week. I'd encourage you to pray about it this week. And let's just let Jesus do the rest. Hey, have a great week, and I'll see you back here in week 9.
Inside of mine, I finally